Buenos dias, bon dia, good morning. It is the end of this week. Today is 22nd of May, and I am delighted to welcome you, everybody here to our daily webinar. An opportunity for all of us to be informed so that we can take better decisions, to be enlightened so that we can reskill, retrain, and understand things in this time of pandemic. These webinars are part of our Hispanic Response and Recovery Plan, and every day we bring incredible Hispanic stars and Hispanic star friends to talk to us. And today is an absolute honor and a pleasure to welcome one of my favorite Hispanic stars, Jorge Ferraez, the president and publisher of Latino Leaders Magazine, who is not only an incredible leader and a magnificent media personality, but also an incredible friend of the World Human Foundation. From very, very early on, we have a fan club of Jorge Ferraez within World Human, and Jorge has been interviewing cross-sector, cross-industry Latino leaders for more than 20 years. And so with this experience, Jorge can provide a unique and thorough perspective of what is leadership, what makes a strong leader. And today we want to invite Jorge Ferraez to talk to us about that. First of all, I want to say, bienvenido, Jorge. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Al contrario, Claudia, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you, participating in the Hispanic Star Initiative. I think that's a great idea. And I think the messages that we can just spread out to all our community and beyond need to be powerful and need to be positive, because we're going to overcome these together, and we're going to be better, much better after all these passes.
And Jorge, I do have to say it. One of the greatest things that happened to us, Jorge Ferraez is part of the Hispanic Star Alliance. The Hispanic Star Alliance is the group, the coalition of 75 Hispanic groups, organizations, and leaders that together have put together this symbol to unify us all, that created and own the Hispanic Star as a symbol to unify us all. Think of the rainbow for the LGBTQ. And when we were deciding it and we were talking about it, how to do it, when to do it, we didn't even have a symbol. Jorge made a commitment to actually have Latino leaders carry it out. And one of our greatest happiness when we started looking at the Hispanic Star and launched it at the United Nations was that you put it on the cover of your magazines for 2020. Thank you so much for that. That meant so much, and it means so much to us. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for allowing. I believe in this project, and I believe that we need new signs, new symbols of that show that the Latino community is thriving. So
right.
Happy.
One symbol like like the rainbow for the LGBTQ. Let's just get that one up. Jorge, I do want to talk about what you have learned over the last 20 years, and based on your concept of leadership and what you have seen, what is leadership and what is not leadership?
Well, I think, Claudia, actually that's a very good question, and I think it sets a little bit of the starting of a everlasting discussion about what is leadership. Is leadership having success? Is it equal? Is leadership being famous? Is leadership being rich? And what we have discovered in all these years is that leadership is something that doesn't have to do with those things that much as we being rich, being famous, being admired. Is a consequence of being a leader, but it's not necessarily linked to that. And let me explain you. When we started doing the interviews, this was almost 30 years ago in Mexico when we started our publication Líderes Mexicanos, and me and my brother, we were ourselves in the search for success or leadership for ourselves. We were two teenagers, immature, just out of college with no other hope or no other project than starting their own business and not knowing where to do. But we started doing this magazine, interviewing leaders, because we wanted to know for our own personal curiosity and our own personal benefit, what were those elements of the leaders that pushed them or took them to that success and that leadership. And that's where we started. So the experience has been tremendous. We have observed certain traits over the years. Actually, the first 10 years, we did a serious study in Mexico at the Universidad Anáhuac. And one of our dear good friends, the one who actually directed my thesis, my work in the university, helped us to do this study and identify some of the most common traits in the first 10 years of interviews that we did in the magazine. So
Interesting.
first, so that's a little bit of what we've been doing.
Jorge, and are those, I mean, like, and now I would love to know, like, so are leaders born or made?
That question. I think that question doesn't have an answer. But let me tell you something. In the main characteristics that we have observed is that I think that it will be safe to say after all these years that a leader is born, but it doesn't necessarily become a leader if it doesn't have the right circumstances around, which is very similar to other conditions of the human body or the human nature. I mean, you can, for example, be born with some kind of gene in your DNA, but if you don't have the right environment, you can be born, for example, Claudia, with a musical gene, and you are able to perform beautifully the violin, for example. But if your parents didn't put you in an environment and you didn't started taking lessons from early on, it's going to be very difficult that you become a good violinist, right? So leadership is the same. People are born with different skills because leadership is like a cocktail of different things. It's not an only formula that you need to have this percentage of this of determination and this percentage of hard work and this percentage of this and that. I mean, it is a cocktail that varies and changes and needs to be adaptable to the circumstances. So the success of anyone's leadership is dependable on your own personal characteristics and the ones that you develop because of your environment. So, for example, um, one of the things that we have observed is that most of the leaders that we have interviewed and have had success have had somehow some difficulty when they were growing up. What does this mean? This means maybe they were not that rich. Maybe they had to face their parents' divorce. Maybe they had to face a situation in which they needed to overcome certain circumstances. But there's always an element of a hardship when they were growing. Perhaps that made them stronger, and that prepared them for later fights in life. But that is one of the elements that we have found in many of the leaders.
I think it's fascinating because you cannot tell, I think that from any Latino, that themselves or their parents have gone through incredible hardships and have faced incredible rejection. So I think that we have that already there. And before going, because you mentioned that you did a research of the first 10 years that you were interviewing leaders, and I would love to see not only what are the 5 characteristics that you find across
Yeah.
every year, the first 10 years and now these years, but also whether there are differences. But before that, when you were talking about leaders born or made, I remember, Jorge, when I went to Chicago, and Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, took me to his to visit his center, community center, and it was a Saturday, and he's a reverend, so he was ordenando una misa. I don't know how to say it in English, but he was
Yeah.
performing
Saying
a
us.
mass. There you go. He was doing a mass, ordenando una misa, well, whatever, and before that there was, and he called in a 6-year old to literally give a speech about like God's grace. And I was like, this is a genius. And he was like, oh no, we trained them. So he
Mm.
took me to the school where from very early on, they have these kids actually talking, like getting lessons about public speaking, because he thought that for the African American community, self-advocacy was key. So he was actually putting those courses into kids very early on so that they can actually go and know how to defend and how to speak and how to do. So I was very curious. I was very interested in what you said about like it's not one thing, it's many different things that consolidate a leader, and whether we are conscious of what leadership style do we need as a Hispanic community, and whether we're putting the pieces together so that each family even, like is conscious about what does it mean for the Hispanic community to have leaders. And if we're not self-advocates, maybe we should do there. You see what I mean? Like
Yeah,
maybe we should be more intentional about understanding what kind of leadership do we need for Hispanics? What is the Hispanic leadership?
yeah.
Uh,
And I think, Lada, you're right. You're nailing it right, because if you are not intentional in developing leaders, I mean, leaders arise naturally. Of course, it's like life. It's like that flower that rises from the concrete floor. But if you open a hole and you put water, instead of one flower, you will have 20. So we need to be more intentional. Let me tell you a story about similar to what you found with Reverend Jackson. One of the interviews that have changed my life was when we made a complete biography work for a former president of Mexico, Carlos Salinas de Gortari. We were his biographers. I mean, when he was leaving his administration, the last 6 months, we became, his biographers, because we were the only ones working on a series of interviews that we made to him, his brother, his father, his friends, his colleagues, his cabinet. So it was a very, very interesting and intense work for me and my brother. And when we learned is that, I mean, this man, for me, is one of the political geniuses that we have had in Latin America, right? I mean, I won't enter into discussions on
yeah.
his, all the political things, because I think that he made mistakes, and he also made some good things. But in terms of developing his genius, what he was exposed when he was a kid, he was 6 years old when his dad invited friends for dinner at his home, and he made him and his brother, who was like 1 year older than him, so two boys of 6 and 7 years old, seated in one corner of a dining room, just to listen the conversation of the adults. And they needed to be there, and they were listening to discussions about democracy, about the Greek culture, about the human nature, about evolution, about many things that usually kids at that age are not exposed. And that made him, and then the father used to discuss with him, okay, what did you learn from this dinner? What did you got from it? And then they were sent, when they were 12 years old, they were sent to Europe, and with only $500 and a ticket to buy a car. And they were instructed that they needed to go to certain cities in Europe, driving their car, and they needed to check in into certain museums every day and make a report every week to send back to Mexico to his dad on what they have learned about that museum, the Louvre in Paris, the Hermitage in Russia, the this and that. So it was a great. Imagine if we could do this with our kids, or imagine that we could do this with our Latino emerging leaders, that we can expose them to discussions, to politics, to science, to education, to culture. That, I think, that is something that we need to do more often.
You know what we will do? We will, you and I always want to do projects with Jorge Ferraez. Who doesn't? I mean, he's the ultimate, like attraction to be doing things with you. You're so amazing. We love you so, so much. But I think that what we could do is, even in this time of coronavirus, it's even more possible to have that access and to have that exposure. So maybe we could just like start looking at what is the definition of Hispanic leadership. I mean, we're hard workers, like there's no tomorrow, no question. We have it ingrained in our, like we see it from la mamá, la abuelita, todas trabajan tanto. So we probably could decide what, like define what is Hispanic leadership and what kind of leaders, like do we have that are authentic to ourselves? And there's a question here from Frank. Um, what kind of like what is the characteristic of leaders, being humility or public stars? And I think that for Hispanics, we're not public, we're not like shiny stars by definition. We're learned to be calladita se ve más bonita. So I think it would be fantastic to identify what is the definition of Hispanic leaders, and then try to do something so that our community can pass that to the kids. We have content from these webinars at least for 7 weeks, in which
Hmm.
we do snippets that are tailored for our children, so that we can actually
Yeah.
be exposing them to different things. Cybersecurity, who knew it was going to be such a present issue during coronavirus, and these kind of things. So how about that, Jorge, that in the month of action, you and I take action doing just that?
Yeah, I love the idea, Claudia. I love the idea. We need to generate more leaders. And let me tell you something. So the question to Frank, leadership comes in every shape, color, and flavor. It's not one. I mean, he's asking a very valid question, because we usually think that a leader needs to be like very outgoing and very eloquent in speaking, and have a smart, brilliant brain to express ideas, and very articulated. And no, I mean, there's leaders that doesn't even have a certain level of education, and they are leaders because they are nature. But when we compare cultures, for example, what are the Latino leaders lacking from the leaders from other countries? Let's remember that in this society, the American society is one of the few societies in which being Latino, you are part of a subculture. You are not part of the general culture, right? So in any other country, either Zambia in Africa, Mexico, Italy, or Hong Kong, you are part of the mainstream. So you don't have to fight first with a subculture, and then from that subculture to be expanded to a more general culture. So one of the things that I think that the Latino community sometimes lacks is, for example, one characteristics of leaders is dreams. If you don't have a dream, even if it's a little bit crazy or crazy at all, I mean crazy completely, it's very difficult that you can excel. Because let me tell you, there's you need to get pushed out of your comfort zone. And when you just wait for someone to push you out of your comfort zone, like what the COVID did with all of us, that's one condition. That's good. That happens, and you need to take the opportunities. But how about in the everyday life, you push yourself out of your comfort zone? So when you have a dream, and that dream is strong enough, and you say, okay, I want to open my restaurant, right? I've been working as a cook for 20 years, and now I want to open my restaurant. Even if it's a crazy idea, if you don't believe in that dream, you will never do it, never. And then after having that dream, Manny Sanchez, the very famous lawyer in Chicago, used to watch this TV show called Perry Mason. A 1950s TV show in black and white, I think. And he was a short, Latino wanting to become a lawyer, and he dreamed about becoming like Perry Mason, who always defended the case and won in front of a court, in front of a jury. So this dream uh, pursued him and helped him to depend that. I mean, to do whatever he needed to do. And another thing that is very common in leaders is that they need to be a little bit, I won't say in Spanish, imprudentes. They need to be act a little crazy. They need to have some kind of dare to do things that are not easy. I know that many of our Latino colleagues or community friends are here, and they need to follow the rules, and they know they need to behave between inside a box. But sometimes you need to be a little bit daring and go out of that box and do things that are different, because that will, more than the outcome, Claudia, of doing something crazy, the sense that you were self-confident enough to go out of the box, at least sometimes, that is very powerful for you to start, working into a leadership career or becoming a leader. One of the perhaps the most common and the most powerful trait for leaders in their leadership career is the persistence. That is by far, by far the most, I think, powerful and the most common trait in leaders, that they have persisted. They haven't quit what they believe they wanted to do. Uh, and it is comparable to what they say when you go and gamble in Las Vegas, for example. And you say, well, the moment that you stop betting is the moment that you lose your money, right? As soon as you keep betting, you haven't lost. You're just in the process of winning or maybe winning. So it is the same with pursuing a career, pursuing an objective, pursuing something. As long as you don't quit that, you will be able to make it. Many leaders have done it because they don't have any other option, but many other leaders have chosen a specific path or a specific dream or objective to follow, and they have done it. And that's one of my definitions of leaders.
So I love it. You mentioned three: dreams, daring or disruptive, and persistent.
Yeah, and persistence is exactly the same as being stubborn, but being stubborn doesn't have a purpose, and persistence is being stubborn with a purpose, right?
Yeah, and I love this. And I just want to make sure that Elisa Charters is actually bringing a very good point. Um, we are all Hispanic stars, and we are all Hispanic stars leaders. I just want to have a hand of, like in the chat, please. People identify. Do you identify you yourself, the one that is in the webinar, checking what Jorge Ferraez is saying? Do you have dreams? Are you daring? And have you been persistent in what you have? I bet all of us do. So just like let's give Jorge a rile. Just say like, yeah, me, and so on. Just chat away and tell us that. I want to make sure that Jorge sees how we're full of Hispanic stars here. Like, we are leaders. We have dreams. We dare. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the place where we are. And we're persistent. And we're not. No, we're not gonna give up. There you go. We have it. Yep, me. Yes, absolutely. Latino power.
Yeah.
So what do you do with this, Jorge? You have interviewed all these people for 20 years. You have here people that have identified with those characteristics. Like how do you take, how do we make this? How do
Well,
we actually manifest that leadership?
you need to discover them in you, and it's not a thing that happens from one day to another. It occurs through the years and through a career. But Claudia, we are living in a moment in where many leaders and leaderships will be defined, because leaders are tested in the crisis. When everything is going well or normal, yeah, you have leaders stronger than others, or but when you are in a crisis, when you are leading a company that is about to close doors because they have lost 80% of their business because of the crisis of the pandemic, and you lead those teams or that team, and you lead that operation, and you are able to overcome it, that is when your final fire test of becoming a leader. And let me tell you, in this sense, there's four big elements that leaders that we have observed have had. Because of course,
Take note, please. There we go.
so one is, I mean, you as a leader, you need to have trust in yourself, and you need to express trust. So the people that want to follow you need to trust you, because you need to be a credible person. You need to have a credible story. You need to have a credible, vision of things. So you need to exude trust. The other thing, very important, is compassion, right? Leaders need to be human, especially now. One of the big transformations, I was talking to one of my good friends, the CFO of Pizza Hut Global, a Latino called Enrique Ramirez, very good friend of mine. And he was telling me, Jorge, what we have observed is that before the pandemic, all the C-suite and the CEO performance was about results, about efficiency. Now, after this, the CEOs have had to transform their performances to become more human centered, not result centered. That is one of the big transformations, Claudia, that we are going to see after this pandemic for many corporations. And those leaders who understand that human side are the ones that I think are going to have more success. Then the third element is stability. A leader needs to show stability and show the way for his or her followers to have stability. And at least, at the end, the most important for me is they need to generate certainty, to generate hope. Without hope, we are fried. Without hope, we are nothing, Claudia. If just imagine this. Remember, we are living in a very small planet compared to the galaxy and the universe. We have no one to defend us outside there. I mean, tomorrow a big asteroid can hit the earth and kill us all in a minute. So if we didn't have hope that our world and our sun is going to come tomorrow morning again, and that we're going to live another good day, and life would be unbearable. That is why the religions and the faiths are so important in human lives, because they give you hope. They give you that thing that you need to grab in order to keep fighting every day the different challenges. So the leader needs to do the same. And what I have seen is that many leaders in this crisis have failed in provoking or in generating hope. And on the other hand, they are actually doing the opposite. They are generating more uncertainty and generating more distress with I don't know, and we need to do this, and we need to stop expanding here, and we need to I understand them. We all were in panic mode at the beginning. But if you don't realize that we all need everybody's hope to go out again, to restart things again, companies, business, society, then we will be seeing many leaders fail if we don't do this.
Jorge, I want to thank you so very much for this. This has been an incredible sense, not only of inspiration, but of of learning. I think that for all of us, we understand we belong, we have everything it takes. We have everything that leaders have, so we're leaders. And number two is, how are the things, this is a path of how to build trust, compassion, stability, and by the way, all of those things Latinos have naturally, Latinas even more, and generate certainty to guarantee hope. As Annalisa is saying, I think that the Hispanic Star is that stamp of hope that we can all hang on to and know that we're stars and ready to shine. Jorge, as a closing note, I want to say thank you so very much. Everything you said really is equal. It compares to what Richard, my husband, has in the trust barometer about institutions that are trusted, that are successful, have the combination between competency, so being able to perform and actually do the things that they say they were going to do, but also ethics, so that people believe in you, so that people can follow you, so that the people know that you're doing for the right thing. So I hope that we all are leaders and can lead our organizations to be trusted institutions as well. Jorge, thank you so very much. Do you have any final thoughts or any final message for the people that are listening?
Just thanking you, Claudia, and all your team. We as Hispanics, we need to take this crisis as an opportunity that will catapult us, all of us, to a better returning to the new normal. In the new normal, I'm sure we are going to see a better Hispanic community here in the U.S. So thank you, thank your team, thank you for this initiative, and I'm always willing to help and to participate.
Thank you so very much, Jorge Ferraez. Have a great weekend, Memorial Weekend, everybody. See you on Tuesday.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.